Veo el campo como que no tiene futuro. No tiene futuro porque necesitaríamos que cambiaran los climas, que lloviera o que lloviera más.
¡Viva los agricultores de Chihuahua!
A really great ability to blend sort of the political, societal, environmental ideas as well. And I thought that the piece had a really great way of doing that because it centered characters who are really on the ground, people this is really their life, having to protect the water, their livelihood, where they grew up. And I think that the narrative worked hard to showcase characters that I don't believe get enough light, get enough exposure. And I think they were trying to use this piece as both a call to action and a sort of informative experience for people like me who were not aware of what was going on there. And there's just so many striking images from the drone shots early on to later on the piece with the police, I believe, tear gassing the compound, the trucks appearing to as a threat as the narrative goes on. And I just thought that there was just a great sense of stakes and drama given the reality of and the human element of the story.
Water debt between the United States and Mexico and the people who it directly impacts, and those people who are, working to, maintain the environment and maintain water sources for themselves and for their farms and for their families. I think it was incredibly impactful. I think the use of real life people and seeing their faces and telling their stories creates a real emotional bond to the story for the viewer that, wouldn't necessarily be there if we just go throughout the facts. I think seeing those real life faces puts such an emotional draw to this and really humanizes the situation. I think these were incredibly impactful stories. I think that information was still there and was still presented in a way that's very digestible for the audience. And I think that you present a good call to action in ways that we can, we can work as a country and, as just humanity to work towards water preservation and fighting water debt as a whole.
This has a focus on Chihuahua in Mexico, and it kind of dives into things such as water debt that Mexico has for the US. And because of this and the droughts that Mexico has been having, it ends up having a detrimental impact within the farmer community, farm workers in this area. So there's a lot of protests happening, a fight against this, which eventually in the end we find that they do end up getting their rights back to the water, but with the impact of climate change, there's still an issue of them having a risk for essentially losing everything that they've worked for. This documentary short ends up coming out with such a strong statement in the beginning of the film where they make a comment that there is no future for farm workers, kind of making a notion that the land will eventually not be able to have a nourishment to grow food due to the lack of water or resources that we have come to face due to human responsibility.
In the beginning of this film, it cleverly oscillates between nature being a place of serenity, and we see this through very beautiful shots of nature, and also the violence that humans are causing in order to protect that serenity. Immediately after that, we are rooted in the story of a father trying to protect his family and livelihood. And in being immersed in his story and his human concerns, we then get a larger glimpse into the issues that impact him, which are the issues of water debt, a larger issue throughout the film. This film uses personal stories and the stories of farmers to confront larger global politics, namely the water debt between Mexico and the US. And at the end, we're forced to see the faces of the folks who are most impacted. And in doing so, and seeing their faces so plainly there, we are then forced to confront ourselves and ask the question of how are we going to solve this issue together? And more importantly, who is going to protect the people who are working so hard to protect water and nature?
The opening line of this documentary is grim, but it also sets the theme for the whole documentary in and of itself. You can see that these farmers are struggling. Their water's been dammed up, but they still don't want to leave their home. They want to fight for their farms. These lands have been in their families probably for generations. They know leaving is not the solution. That's how they seem to think about it. They will if they absolutely have to, but they don't want to. It's their job to provide food and sustenance and maintain their farms, but their governments aren't working for them, which is sad. It's what makes the whole opening line grim and kind of sets the theme for the whole documentary. The score, of course, works, but you really feel for these people that their government is working against them. The lines at the end, towards the end, where they're saying they don't want to go to the United States because the fools who go there don't work, shows that they really don't want to leave their homes, and that they kind of pay attention. They're close enough to the border where they're paying attention to both sides of the rhetoric, and the idea of just leaving everything behind is terrifying to them.
I always say the strength of a documentary rides and dies on the subject matter, and this was, interesting subject matter about topics and issues that I'd never even heard about or, you know, even fathomed before. And so I always think, it's good when a documentary can show you things that you never thought about before or perspective that you've never seen before. So that's kind of why we make documentaries, you know what I mean? And I think this accomplished that. And it made me, it informed me on an issue, made me care about an issue that I didn't before. And, and you know, and that's kind of the whole thing with documentaries, Also the cinematography was really great. It felt like was like portrait style. That portrait style that y'all used, I think was a good choice for this. Like putting faces to this story as far as like these are the farmers. Look at them in the eyes. These are people.
Lovely scenes of walnut fields contrasted with the footage from the conflict and violence. Over 400 days of safeguarding the dam with hopefully lasting results, positive results, and a real policy changes. This is a good way of raising awareness for issues that we might not be aware of necessarily, and that we need to pay attention to because it's our natural resources.